When this day comes, you generally have two options, and one is a lot more dynamic. The most common option is you could sell your home. The second option is you can rent it out. Hello Internet, my name is Ryan Ingram, and this video is specifically for first-time home buyers. So I just want to make sure that you set yourself up for success and think through some very key things before you make this massive purchase, because it is a big deal. It might be the most amount of money you ever spend in one spot. So we have to go over a few key things to think about. So by the time the video is over, you're gonna know exactly whether or not you're making a good long-term decision. Now, before we get started, I want to be sure that you are clear that I do not want anything from you. I am not a realtor, I'm not a loan officer, I'm not somebody selling courses, seminars, webinars, anything. I just want to help you think through some very key things that can make a massive impact for you, your family, and your future generations, because this is a really big decision. Chances are, if you're a first-time home buyer, if you're looking for a house, then you don't know who I am. You've never seen me before, because again, I'm not trying to sell you anything. A lot of the people already subscribed to my channel are real estate investors or looking to get into real estate investing. So I just want to do a very quick introduction of myself. My name is Ryan Ingram. I own an insurance agency, but that again is not why I'm here. My brother and I, we started investing in rental properties back in August of 2017, and we now have about 76 rental properties. So I am very passionate about real estate investing. I want to share all the information that I have with anybody that wants to hear it, specifically to improve the financial position of their family and just the trajectory that your family is on. So far, personally, I've purchased 4 homes for my family and I to live in. Now, in purchasing these homes, I've made small mistakes, big mistakes, and I've accidentally gotten several things right that I want to share with you. So thanks for allowing me to introduce myself, and without further delay, let's go over the real meat of this video. So the first thing that I really want you to ask yourself is why? Why are you buying this home? Since this is your first home that you're purchasing, there is a very high likelihood that this is not your dream home. This is not your forever home, right? This is probably just like a very utilitarian means to an end purchase. If you're thinking that you're buying your home for the first time because it's better than renting, then sure, you're probably right depending on your personal financial situation. However, that's a really low bar to set for yourself, and I want to go ahead and challenge you to think way bigger than that, because that's a very small goal. Now, that is the reason that I bought my first home, is because the apartment that my friend and I were living in, they just kept raising our rent. So finally, they raised it to about $1,300 a month, and we said, no way we could buy a house for this. So I looked at my roommate and I said, hey, if I bought a house, would you pay half the mortgage? And that was about as far as I got. But again, going back, there are a lot of things that I would do differently. Another common reason that people buy homes is to get in a better school district for their kids, their growing family. And yes, that's probably a good idea, but there are definitely cheaper ways to get your kids in a better school district than buying a house in that area. And if that is your sole reason, you're probably setting yourself up to lose a good amount of money. And of course, the last reason that I've heard a lot of people buy homes is because they have heard that it is a good tool to build wealth. And you know, a lot of people are out there saying that your home is your largest investment. So sometimes people want to buy homes as quickly as possible just because they have heard a lot of people say this. But I want to dive deeper and again challenge you to think about this via the appropriate lens. Okay, now we've gone over the why and just highlighted some common reasons that people buy their home. And just for my own curiosity and edification, please just comment below the reason that you are buying your home for the first time. So now let's talk about how to buy your first home. And I don't want to be insulting. If you are watching this video, then you're probably already very familiar that you have to find a realtor, that you know the MLS is where a lot of the listings are, and that you also need a loan officer. The only real tip that I want to give you as far as the actual process goes is, in my experience, the smaller local credit unions have a much better ability to give you cheaper rates, cheaper terms, and by and large, they're just generally a lot more flexible. The places like Quicken Loans, these other places like Quicken Loans, or a lot of the kind of mortgage brokers that represent tons of different people, there's just a lot of hidden fees, and they're very much so cookie cutter. So you have to, probably have a W-2 job, have a certain level of income, and just all of the standards that we're all familiar with buying a home. If you're looking for something a little bit more flexible because of a low credit score that you're working on or something like that, I would highly recommend that you go find a local credit union and build a relationship with an individual in there. That way they can make a decision based on, a case by case, just getting to know you. So that's my only 2 cents as far as how to find a realtor, a loan officer, and actually get a loan to buy your first home. So when it comes to buying your first home, I really want you to know your numbers. And I'm not talking about how much income you make or how much you were pre-approved to buy. What I mean is I really want you to figure out and hold the loan officer or the credit union to the fire to really figure out exactly how much the estimated mortgage payment is going to be. Now, since this is a home, a lot of times these credit unions and mortgage officers or loan officers want to escrow your taxes and your insurance. And what the escrow means is every month, included in your mortgage payment, they're going to collect an extra amount of money, enough to pay for your full year's worth of insurance and also your full year's worth of taxes. Because the mortgage has your home as collateral, they want to make sure that it stays insured and also that the taxes are paid. And the reason they want to make sure of that is on the taxes side, if you don't pay your taxes, then now the municipality has the ability to foreclose on your property and forcibly seize that from you. Now, that causes the mortgage company or whoever has your loan a lot of legal fees. So they want to avoid that. And the easiest way they can avoid that is to always make sure those taxes are paid. That is why they escrow the taxes. And obviously the insurance, if the property burns down, if some drunk driver runs right through it, or something crazy like that happens, then that destroys the bank's collateral. Now, there's nothing worse than having lent out $150,000, $200,000 that was once secured to now no longer be secured. So again, in order to make sure that their collateral is secured and safe, and even if it were to burn down, then they would still be protected so long as your insurance stays in force. So the easiest way to do that, again, is for them to pay it on your behalf. So that is escrow in a nutshell. Okay, so after you understand exactly what your monthly payment is going to be, now a lot of the common advice that you get from loan officers, from your friends and family, is to make sure that you make, a lot more money than this. Some people say 50% or less you should spend on your mortgage payment. Other people say 25% of your monthly income or less you should spend on a mortgage payment. And I honestly don't really care about that part. That's on you. Don't make a bad decision. Make a good decision. I don't have any concern on how much you make. This is my point that I wish someone pointed out to me and that I would love for you to know and constantly think about. After you get this, for the sake of this video, let's say that your monthly payment is $1,000. Now again, this only includes the mortgage payment, the taxes and insurance. You still have your water bill, your electricity, your internet, landscaping, all the other expenses that are included in you maintaining your home. But those I don't want you to worry about. I want you to then go over to rentometer.com. Rentometer.com is a really cool tool where you can see other homes in the area that have the same number of bedrooms and bathrooms and what they rent out for. Because here's where the rubber of building generational wealth really meets the road. And that's that, let's say you decide that you no longer like this neighborhood. You no longer want to send your kids to this school, or this house is just now too small for you. When this day comes, you generally have two options, and one is a lot more dynamic. The most common option is you could sell your home. The second option is you can rent it out. Now, a lot of people didn't think about their home appropriately when they purchased it, so they're really trying to be creative and, shove a square peg in a round hole to make their home work as a rental. But that's not the intention they had when they purchased it. So sometimes it can be really hard, especially now since they're giving out 3.5–5% down loans. Then there's generally not much equity in the home whenever you come to this realization and are forced to make this decision. A good real estate investor will tell you that you should never sell a home. As much as possible, always keep all of the properties that you ever purchase. I, again, have mentioned that I have purchased 4 homes now for my family to live in. The latter 2 are ones that I will have in my family indefinitely, and they will always be rentals. The one that I'm living in now passes all of these tests and will be a phenomenal rental property whenever we decide to move out. The previous one, we purchased it specifically for a rental property, and that allowed us to really build our wealth quickly because we bought a very small house. We went way below our means so that we could save more money. Now, the first 2 are the ones that I learned the most on. However, they're also the ones that appreciated the most. If I were to have been able to keep those homes, then they are worth now more than $100,000 over what I paid for them just 6, 7, 8 years ago. Oh, and how time flies. I just turned 30. I bought my first house when I was 23. I can't believe that it's been 6 or 7 years. But I say all that because if I kept those homes, I would have an additional $200,000 to my net worth. I don't have that because I didn't think about these properties appropriately as I was acquiring them. So once you have your mortgage number, you want to go over to rentometer.com or on Zillow. You can unselect the for sale and select the for rent and look at all of the surrounding homes and the estimated rental value of those properties. So what I want you to do is when you have this number, you find the rental amount and you just subtract the 2. You always want to make sure that this number is much smaller, as small as possible compared to the amount that you could rent the property out for. Now, generally about a $200 or $300 spread is very desirable and something that is almost like the minimum that you should strive for. Now, I've recorded another video. It's called Would My House Make a Good Rental?, where I go a lot more in depth behind this, but I just wanted to point out pretty briefly that you want the amount that your property could rent for to be greater than your mortgage, taxes, and insurance. Now, a lot of people break up this mortgage payment. You'll hear it called PITI or PITI, which is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So since I said about $200 is really the floor of what you want to work with, then let's say the rental value on this is $1,200. Your monthly payment for all of these is $1,000. So your cash flow for this property would be $200 per month. Now, very quickly, that might not sound like a lot of money. However, I want to highlight that in real estate investing, there are a lot of different ways that you can make money. You have the appreciation, you have the tax benefits. You can write off the amount of interest that you pay on a monthly basis for your mortgage. You can also depreciate the overall asset. So each year that you own the home, you'll be able to write off a certain amount of that. So there's the tax benefits, and you also have the cash flow and the principal pay down. So as the property appreciates, just generally on average, just across the US, the average rate of inflation or appreciation is about 4%. So the property, your asset, is becoming more valuable, and you're also paying the principal down. So your equity, the amount of capital that you have, which is the amount owed versus the value of the property, it's growing in both directions at the same time, which, if you were to rent this property out and purchase another home, then you would duplicate that process. So now you've got a tenant in the property paying $1,200, which is paying your principal down. You still get all of the write-off for the taxes, and the property is appreciating. You're going to also benefit from the new house that you live in. So the goal is to not sell your first home under any circumstances ever. Instead, you're going to hold on to it, because if you got a 30-year loan at a phenomenal interest rate, then over that 30 years, it's almost like a forced savings account. Plus, you're making about $200 a month. Now, in these other videos, I make sure to really point out I don't necessarily like the forced savings account model without the proper setup and explanation. because you don't want to accidentally lose a lot of money. So in this $200 per cash flow, even though a tenant is in that property, if it's a single family home, then they become responsible for the lawn care, the utilities, pretty much everything. So these are really your only main responsibilities unless something goes wrong from a maintenance perspective on the property. The roof, the water heater, a plumbing leak, any of that comes out of your cash flow. And then if the cash flow isn't sufficient to cover it, it comes out of your pocket. So it's very important to keep reserves, which is why I want to say, since you're living in this property, there's probably not much deferred maintenance on the property. But another key factor that you want to consider in buying your first home is how much deferred maintenance is on the property, especially if you are looking to rent it out after you've lived there for a little bit. You want to take an honest look at the state of the property. If the roof is older, you want to go ahead and consider that when you're trying to figure out if you want to hold on to that property, and just make sure that you save enough so that you can fix it without issue, so it doesn't beat up your cash flow too horribly after you've got it rented out. Now, from the maintenance perspective, another cool thing that's just a great idea to keep in the back of your head is once this equity grows, there's different ways that you can tap into it. At a certain point, you can refinance. You can either leave the equity in and lower your monthly payment in order to grow the cash flow, or you can refinance and take cash out. So when you take cash out, you would then be able to just keep that on the side as reserves to handle any maintenance issues that might come up on this property, or you could use that as a down payment to purchase another rental property or a nicer home for yourself. And lastly, it's not necessarily too common for rental properties, but if you are still living in this property and it has a decent amount of equity, then you would be able to take out a home equity line of credit on the property. So when you do that, it's kind of like a second mortgage. So you still have your first mortgage, your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. That payment's still being made. And then on top of that, it's kind of like you have a credit card that's secured by the home. So it's going to be at a lower interest rate. And let's say you have 20 grand of equity in the home, then you might get a line of credit for $10,000 or $15,000. And the cool thing about lines of credit is you only pay them as you use them, just like the credit card. So any payments that you make goes first towards the interest owed for that month, and then anything in addition to that goes towards principal. So I've got a few friends that got a line of credit on their home before they moved out, and they used that line of credit just as a buffer to go ahead and pay for any maintenance expenses on their first home that is now a rental property. That way, let's say the roof goes bad, they put it on their line of credit, and then they pay off that line of credit at their convenience. I think that's a phenomenal strategy. Very quickly, I want to go over a term called house hacking, just a very high-level overview. As I mentioned earlier, I accidentally house hacked when I bought my first home when I was 23. I looked over at my roommate when we were living in an apartment, and I said, "Hey man, this rent's getting too high. If I bought a house, would you live with me and pay half the mortgage?" So that was like the first kind of house hack, sort of, not really, because I didn't do it with the intentions of making money or to the full extent that I could have. But nonetheless, whenever I got married and he moved out, I was able to keep all of the equity that we generated while we were living there together. So ultimately, it was a great deal for me. However, house hacking is generally if you buy a house, again, let's say 3-bed, 2-bath, and you rent out the other 2 rooms. I would highly recommend this strategy for young professionals that work with a lot of people a similar age and are close friends. That way everybody's on the same schedule. It's just very cut and dry. It worked out really well for me. I was doing a bunch of shift work at the moment, so it was kind of like my roommate and I lived alone because whenever he wasn't working, I was working. We weren't on the same shift. So we only had about 8 days off per month together, which is the only real opportunity that we had to see each other. So it works out very well. If you do this in your 20s, then you almost have to be extraordinarily negligent at this point, because over time, it's just going to add so much to your net worth, and it's going to put you in such a good position financially. Another way to house hack is not by the room, but by the units. So that loan that you were just pre-qualified for, that is good for a single family home, a duplex, a triplex, or a 3-unit building, and even a 4-family. So anything that is 1 to 4 units qualifies for any residential loan. And you can rent out the other 3 units, which would bring you a tremendous amount of income and you would be able to live in that one unit virtually for free, because the amount of expenses between the mortgage, insurance, and taxes is going to be much smaller than the other units that are rented out, especially if it's a 4-family. Now, I've recorded a video all about house hacking using like a real example. A good friend of mine moved up to Ohio with me. He rented one of my properties for a very long time, and we worked together to build up his credit, to help him save up a larger down payment, and now he has purchased a 4-unit. So I go over all of the numbers using a real example to show you the amount of impact that one decision is going to have for just decades to come on his financial position. So essentially, he eliminated all of his monthly expenses because he's living in the 1 unit, he's renting out the other 3, and in addition to living for free, he's also added about $1,000 of monthly recurring income to his bank account, which is awesome. I've read entirely too many books about real estate investing. I'm really partial to it. I hope this video was extraordinarily helpful. I know real estate has absolutely changed my life. My brother and I became millionaires in about a span of 3 or 4 years, just from understanding real estate and how it works. So I highly encourage you to just think in extraordinarily targeted and focused details about the why you're buying your first home, how you're going to buy your first home, and please make sure that it is also going to be a great rental property when your family outgrows it, when you decide you don't want to live in that area anymore, or if you're just ready for some new scenery. Because if you can manage to hold on to all of your properties that you ever purchase, you will have millions to your name by the time 30, 40, 50 years passes, because appreciation, again, is such a powerful thing, especially when you couple that with the principal being paid down with someone else's money. Leverage is a phenomenal tool that is going to add so much money to your net worth if you appropriately harness it. Especially on mortgages, it's very unique because it's secured. It's a very safe risk for banks, which is why they give such long-term, low-interest rates when it's backed by real estate. So please do your due diligence, understand, do more research, look into real estate investing, even if it's not even something you're interested in, just because it is such a powerful tool and absolutely has the ability to change your life. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, want any more information, please don't hesitate to comment below. I'll do my best to answer all of the comments, and genuinely just want to help you make really good decisions for your life and your families. Thanks so much. I really look forward to speaking to you soon.